I think you should stop listening to podcasts. And before you go crazy on me and you insult me in the comments or whatever, relax. Just listen to the whole thing. But here's the thing. I used to be the kind of person that was constantly listening to podcasts. I don't know how many hours a day, maybe like 2, 3, 4 hours a day. Because whenever I had the time to do it, either while I was driving, cooking, eating, working out, just doing anything, basically I would have a podcast on the background. And if you're the same kind of person, I would invite you to try to stop it. And here's why. The way that there's many reasons, okay, but the main one is that when you're listening to podcasts, you're not letting yourself think. And thinking is crucial. That sounds super stupid that I'm talking about the importance of thinking. But having these big windows of time, whether you're like working out or cooking or eating, having those windows of time to actually think is crucial, because that's the time where your mind will go to find solutions to the problems you're having. You'll be thinking about the decisions you're making in your life, what's working, what's not working. You'll come up with new ideas for new projects, whatever. But if you're filling that time constantly with podcasts, then you're not letting yourself think. You're thinking about other things that people tell you are important to think. But what's really important to consider is that actually, if you're honest, not many podcasts are that worth it. Here's the thing, I'm not saying to not ever listen to a podcast ever again. I'm just saying stop doing it compulsively. And if you listen to a podcast, be very objective about why is it worth your time and why you should be listening to it. Don't listen to a podcast just because you want to fill some time and now you're going shopping and you're going to be shopping for 1 hour and you'll be thinking like, well, I might as well be listening to something while I'm shopping, because I think this is how most people do it. And my main point is that I think you should stop doing that, because as I said, those are the windows of time where you're thinking, and trust me, like, you're way smarter than you think. You know way more stuff than you might think. I'm sure, like most people that are watching this video, they've read hundreds of books or dozens of books and self-help. You've already listened to hundreds of podcasts, you've studied a lot, you've done your research, you actually know a lot more than you think. So I don't believe you're learning that much from podcast. Overall, there might be a few exceptions, but I would say 70 or 80% of the podcasts you're listening to, you might not be learning as much. And the things you're learning, because maybe you're thinking, well, I'm actually learning a lot of things. The things you're learning are not as important as you think, right? So, for example, let's say you're listening to a Lex Friedman podcast and he brings on, I don't know, I think he did a podcast with the CEO of Coinbase, okay? And I think they talked about how they got Coinbase, a crypto company, to be public in the stock market and all these things. Now, let's be honest, how important is that in your life? How relevant it is for you to actually know how to take a crypto company and take it to the stock market and make it a public company? I mean, is it nice to know and to hear that story? Yeah, for sure. But there's a hierarchy of things that are important in your life, right? Maybe you need to lose weight. Maybe you're having relationship problems with your girlfriend, boyfriend, or family, whatever. Maybe you're having money problems. Your business is having whatever problem it's having. Or maybe you're dealing with emotional issues. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of things you would like in your life to improve. So within that hierarchy of problems and things that would be nice to know or learn or whatever, how high is it to take a crypto company public on the stock market? How high is it? Here's the thing, like, I'm not saying it doesn't have any value. I'm just saying that I don't think it's as important as most people think it is. In the same way that when we were in school and they were teaching us about, I don't know, the name of this river in I don't know which country and its properties and its width and I don't know, whatever it is. Is it nice to know? Yeah, of course, right? But how important is it? I don't think it's that important. So it's the main point that I'm making with the podcast. And another thing that I would say is that I believe that if you're a well-read person, you've had your experiences in life and you've studied and you've had your businesses and whatever, all these things that I'm sure you've experienced, I would not say that the people going on these podcasts, especially the podcasts that I'm talking about, are more like interview-like. So whether it's like Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, Tim Ferriss, this kind of podcast, I don't think most guests are that much smarter than you are. Like, here's the thing, I do genuinely believe that most people who are interested in these things are way smarter than they think. And if the end goal is to actually improve your life and to get ahead, what's the best way to actually get there? Well, first of all, look at the main problems you're having right now and then trying to figure out those solutions. And the problem is that when you're listening to a podcast, you're not tackling those tangible and actual problems that if you fixed, you would get to the next level in life. You're thinking about some other stuff that's not important, like how to take your company public and all these things. Yeah, one day maybe you need it, but at least I don't need it right now. So, and that's a problem. Like, it gives us this false idea, this fake sense that we're actually learning so much, how knowledgeable I am. And here's the thing, like, I remember that they did a podcast with this guy, the CEO of Coinbase, but I don't remember much of what they talked about. If you know what podcast I'm referring to, do you actually remember that much? Maybe you remember a few things, but honestly, I don't remember that much. And that's another thing, like, if you're constantly listening to podcast after podcast after podcast after podcast, I think there's studies that show that when you learn something and then you immediately move to something else, you're not letting your brain have enough time to digest it and actually remember it. So having those windows of time to actually stop, step back, and let your mind absorb all the things you've been listening to, that's actually very important. So what I would suggest in the approach that I have now when it comes to podcasts is to, that article by Derek Sivers, which is Hell Yeah or Hell No, when it comes to deciding what you want to do in life, or Mark Manson made the equivalent one, but with relationships, which is like fuck yes, fuck no, which is basically like, if you're thinking about doing something or you're thinking about dating someone, if it's not like a hell yeah, I want to do it, just don't do it, right? If you're thinking like, well, maybe, yes, this, that, do not do it. So it's the same thing with podcasts. I do check like the podcasts that I follow, I check it daily, like what podcasts have been published and all that. But if I don't see one that I'm like, hell yes, I want to listen to this one, and this one is absolutely interesting, and they're gonna talk about things that are relevant to me and whatever, if that's not my reaction, skip it next. I would much rather have time by myself to think and do nothing and think about my own problems and my own things and figure out my own solutions than not just listen to someone else tell me this or that or whatever. So I would encourage you to just try it. I'm not telling you to believe me or whatever, just try it. Next time you're working out or doing whatever, don't listen to anything. And it would help a lot if you actually know what problems you have in life. Because a lot of times we have these emotions like we're not happy about how things are going or this or that. But because we're constantly feeding on YouTube videos and podcasts and this or that, we feel bad because things are not going right, but we don't even know what the problem is. So maybe that's the first thinking session you have to do. Like, okay, what do I need in my life? What problems do I have? And then over time, then you can start thinking about those if you keep having those windows of time, and you can start coming up with ideas and solutions and try things. And also like just understand yourself better, which is something that's actually very important too. So that's how I see it now. The way I see it now is when for example, I have to drive a lot. So now the way I say it is that when I drive, I'm listening to the podcast of my own mind. That's the best podcast you can listen to, the podcast of your own mind. So I encourage you to try this. Trust me, you're way smarter than you think. You know way more stuff than you think. Try it, and yeah, let me know what you think about this one, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.